Amanda Alexander, Executive Director of the Detroit Justice Center. I moved home to Michigan 5 years ago to serve families like mine that have been divided by the prison system. Detroit was about to file the largest ever municipal bankruptcy, and people couldn't seem to decide if we were 50 years ahead or 50 years behind the rest of the country. It's clear to me that we're 50 years ahead. We are a city of solutionaries. Detroiters have become resilient out of necessity. When it comes to urban agriculture, we are decades ahead of the curve. When grocery stores left, people didn't want to leave, so they taught themselves how to farm and how to build a local food system. This is just one example of some of the resilient, sustainable solutions that Detroiters have developed. I founded the Detroit Justice Center on the belief that we cannot build cities that work for everyone without addressing mass incarceration. Detroit is really fertile ground for thinking about how to build sustainable cities that'll be just and equitable for decades to come. Before I get into some of the solutions that we're developing, let me dig a bit deeper into some of the problems. So when I say that we can't build cities that work for everyone without addressing mass incarceration, why do I say that? It's because incarceration is a driver of poverty. When families have a loved one incarcerated, they spend on average $13,600 in court costs alone. I've worked with families in the last several years who make impossible decisions every day between picking up a phone call and taking a collect call from a loved one who's incarcerated, or putting groceries on the table, or keeping the lights on. These are decisions that families should not have to make, and they are pushing families out of the city because the city is becoming unaffordable. All of the solutions that Detroiters have developed in terms of building a resilient economy, they're also under threat. So this land that people are farming, it's valuable to developers now in a way that it wasn't before. And so they need help securing their land, setting up community land trust. And finally, nationally, we suffer from a lack of vision about how to build a world without prison. There's lots of talk about ending mass incarceration, and yes, we will tear down jails and prisons, but we don't yet have a clear vision of what will go in its place. So our approach, it's three-pronged. I've come to call it defense, offense, and dreaming, because we need all three. Our legal services practice goes on defense. So this is where we meet Detroiters where they're at. All of the legal barriers that are keeping families shut out of the future of the city, we remove those. So suspended driver's licenses, outstanding warrants, fines, fees, tickets, criminal justice debt. That's the work of our legal service attorneys. Our economic equity practice goes on offense. So this is where we shore up all of the transformational economic solutions that Detroiters have come up with, supporting community land trust, renter and worker co-ops, and enterprises led by returning citizens. And finally, the Just City Innovation Lab is where we dream. We dream up this world beyond prisons, and we come up with pilot programs and strategic partnerships to start to build out our vision of a just city. So in terms of just cities, again, the idea here is that it's not enough to end mass incarceration. We also need to build up certain things in order to restore our communities. So some of the things that we are piloting and thinking about, they're really big questions, and we're coming up with big solutions. We're tackling questions like, how do we replace school-to-prison pipelines with prison-to-job pipelines, or prison-to-higher education pipelines? 10,000 people leave prison every week in the US, and cities don't really have a way to plan for how that reentry can be successful. So we're coming up with data tools to help cities and communities do that. We're tackling questions like, what does the future of work look like once prisoner and prison guard are no longer job categories? So once we tear down prison towns, which we will, we're going to need a way of thinking about what thriving rural economies can look like without prison guard jobs. And finally, what can we build instead of jails and prisons that can actually get at these root issues of mental health issues, substance abuse issues, and addiction? Here's a preview of what we'll be up to this summer. So we are partnering with Designing Justice, Designing Spaces to create that data tool that cities and communities can use to plan for successful reentry, to plan for these 10,000 people who are coming home. We're also going to lead design workshops with young people in Detroit. So Detroit is really intent on building a new youth detention center. But we're going to convene young people and say, what would you design instead of 200 new jail beds. What could we build for you instead of a jail that would make you feel valued and empowered? We'll come up with that this summer. We have been really fortunate to have seed stage support from a number of incredible partners, including Echoing Green, New Profit and Unlocked Futures, and the Novo Foundation. If any of this is exciting or intriguing to you, I would love to hear from you and find ways that we can partner to create and build out this vision of a just city. Thank you.